we reaffirmed that Ukraine will become a member of NATO and agreed to remove the requirement for a membership action plan. This would change Ukraine's membership path from a two-step process to a one-step process.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says the leaders of the military organization's member nations have agreed to allow Ukraine to join when allies agree and conditions are met.
What allies have agreed today is a strong, united and positive message to Ukraine about enduring support, but also a positive message on the path forward for membership.
Stoltenberg's comments came after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy blasted the alliance's failure to set a timeline for Ukraine's membership, calling it unprecedented and absurd.
Yesterday agreed to also make Sweden a full member, that Turkey will ratify the accession protocols for Sweden. So this sends a clear and strong message, and it also demonstrates that President Putin's war or aggression against Ukraine was a big strategic mistake. He totally underestimated the Ukrainians, he underestimated the unity of NATO allies, but he also underestimated the political consequences in countries like Sweden and Finland. He went to war because he wanted less NATO. He's getting more NATO.
Elsewhere, Turkey made a surprise pledge to drop its opposition to Sweden joining NATO, paving the way for the Nordic country to become a member of the Western Military Alliance.
It's well known that Sweden, after 200 years of non-alignment, we seek common protection, but I also want all NATO allies to know that we also provide security, provide common security, and we are here for the long term.
After years of holding out, Turkey has agreed to support Sweden's NATO bid by putting the issue to a vote in Parliament in return for deeper cooperation with Sweden on security issues and a pledge from Sweden to revive Turkey's quest for EU membership. The agreement also says Sweden and Turkey will step up trade and investment with each other. The leaders of the military alliance are gathering in Lithuania for their annual meeting. On day one, they pledged to boost spending on national defense, even though Canada and other countries have failed to meet the previous target for years. NATO members have agreed to make the existing target of 2% of each country's gross domestic product the minimum spend each year, but there's no clear plan for how they will achieve that. Canada has agreed to the target, but current spending sits just shy of 1.3%. Joining us now to talk about the NATO summit is Professor Andres Kasekamp from the Munk School of Global Affairs. Day one, Professor, what stuck out to you? Do you think there were any surprises?
Well, the first surprise actually came yesterday with Turkey agreeing to Swedish membership. Everyone knew that this would be a tough bargaining, but we were surprised how quickly the Turkish president agreed. It seemed that the deal, what clinched the deal, was the U.S. president pledging that Turkey will be able to buy U.S. F-16 fighter jets. So actually, it seems that it wasn't only about Sweden, but what the Turks could get from the U.S. So that was the first positive outcome already yesterday. But today, the first official day of the summit, the big focus was on the communique, which just came out. And it's pretty, I would say, weak on Ukraine and Ukrainian membership in NATO. It's really repeating the same language that we heard at the NATO summit in 2008 in Bucharest, which said that Ukraine will become a member of NATO, but it doesn't lay out any sort of definite timetable. It's only when the allies agree that Ukraine will be ready. So this, I think, is quite disappointing for Ukraine and kind of reflects the lowest common denominator.
And going off of that, Professor, the head of NATO says there is a plan to get Ukraine into the alliance, but this is clearly not moving fast enough for the war-torn country. Do you think it was the logical move to keep Ukraine's membership on the back burner for right now? And what might come next?
Well, the NATO countries have been saying that Ukraine will be ready when the war is over. The danger is, of course, that the war will drag on, and of course, this disincentivizes the Russian government to stop the war. In fact, it encourages the Russian government to keep it going if it knows that Ukraine has no path while the war is still ongoing. I think it's the only consensus that the members could have reached at this point. It kind of lacks real ambition, and the hope would be that tomorrow they will make up for this or compensate for the weak language by providing Ukraine with much more equipment in a faster tempo than they have been doing so far.
Theoretically, if NATO were to grant Ukraine membership, let's say tomorrow, what would happen? Would the other NATO countries be obligated to intervene in Russia's war?
No, that is not an obligation. They would be obligated to help Ukraine in any way possible, but that's what they're already doing at the moment. And of course, it's wrong to think that the decision about NATO membership, that this would happen automatically. Just as we saw with Sweden and earlier Finland, the decision to invite them to join doesn't mean that they become members automatically. There is a process, a ratification, and this takes quite some time. So I would have hoped that the Allies would have got the ball rolling on that rather than pushing the can down the road in this case. So I think that is a misapprehension which a lot of people were suffering under, that the leaders would offer Ukraine membership and that would happen then today, and NATO would all of a sudden be involved in a war with Russia. That's not actually how things work.
Thanks so much for joining us, Professor.
Thank you.